Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. By now you've heard that on Monday, President Donald Trump met with Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador. In an act of true infamy, the two fellow authoritarian leaders collectively agreed with one another that Kilmar Abrego Garcia will not be returned to the United States. This, even though the U.S. has admitted that Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador was illegal. That was bad enough, but the specifics of their whole discussion made the whole thing into a truly extraordinary display of lawlessness. We're going to work through all of this with Asawin Subsang, a senior political reporter at Rolling Stone magazine and an adjunct journalism professor at the University of Cincinnati. He has a new piece arguing that Trump and his henchmen are openly, expressly mocking the Supreme Court, which has ruled on this. Great to have you back on, Swin.
I wish you were under brighter circumstances, but it is always a pleasure to be on the pod with you, Greg.
Thank you, and it is extraordinarily dark right now. To catch everyone up, Abrego Garcia, who originally had a form of protection in the U.S. known as withholding from removal, could not be deported to El Salvador, but the Trump administration did just that, claiming an administrative error. The Supreme Court has ruled that Trump must facilitate his return to the U.S., while sending the case back to a lower court to define precisely what the administration must do to effectuate this return. Trump was asked during his meeting with Bukele if he'll abide by the Supreme Court. Here's what he said.
You said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that?
Swin, there you have it. Trump says Abrego Garcia is a criminal, even though he was never charged with any crime and his deportation was canceled by a judge. And therefore, Trump won't follow the Supreme Court. Your thoughts?
It was once agreed upon across virtually all partisan lines in American culture and politics that the old saying that I would rather let 100 guilty men go free than imprison just one innocent man was a good thing. That was a principle that we as a society and as a country that apparently pretends to value things like the rule of law should live by, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or anything else. And I think one of the most perverse things that we've been seeing in recent weeks is that the second Trump administration isn't just inverting that old saying completely and turning on its head, but they're doing so very publicly, very gratuitously, and gleefully in public from the President of the United States on down. I mean, I've run out of polite ways to characterize it, and without, saying the word fucking hell, we're living in fucking hell right now over and over and over again to you, I think that is the most polite way I can characterize it to your listeners, and I think it'll be all downhill from here.
Well, in the same meeting, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the following about whether Abrego Garcia will be returned. Quote, "It's up to El Salvador if they want him returned." Swin, this is just pure bullshit. The Trump administration can simply ask Bukele to turn him over so that the U.S. government can follow the ruling of our highest court, which is, again, that it facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. So where are we now with the chief law enforcement officer in the United States basically saying, we don't have to do this. This is on the dictator of El Salvador to decide.
Just like you said earlier, it's more lying. It's more bullshit. All Donald Trump has to do is give a wink and a nod. It would take 2.5 seconds, maybe fewer than that, for him to get the government in El Salvador to get this guy back on a plane to American soil. And they are just steadfastly refusing to do it. There are a multitude of reasons as to why, both absolutely cynical and absolutely, other barbaric things. We have a new piece this week at rollingstone.com that's based on our conversations with sources within and very close to the Trump White House and the Trump administration. And they laid out at least a few key reasons as to why they're doing this and refusing to just basically, with a flick of their finger, they could have this guy back. Among the reasons they're refusing to do that is, one, it's a very cosmetic and very stupid one, but it's one that runs deeply through the veins of the Republican Party right now, and especially the Trumpified Republican Party. They really, really, really do not want to give the quote-unquote media a win on this. They don't want to give people like you and me a win. They don't want to give us a scalp, and retreating on this, in Donald Trump's view and Stephen Miller's view and J.D. Vance's view and all their views would be precisely that. On a more practical, shall we say, and legal matter, there are senior lieutenants in Trump's administration who are concerned that caving in on this case, even if they don't believe that this guy in the darkest pit of their hearts did anything wrong, that caving on this could set up a cascading effect where other people who they really want to keep down there in the torture prison in El Salvador will be able to bring their own special due process claims or challenges that could kind of tear at the seams of this policy to a point that they really don't want to happen. And another part of it has to do with optics and their full-blown propaganda campaign, because as much as they love to deport and rendition and remove and keep people out, a very effective tool with the second Trump administration is the propaganda war that they're fighting that either scares people from trying to come to the United States or scares people who are undocumented, or even if they are documented but don't necessarily have the exact status that a Trump or a J.D. Vance would quote unquote value or whatever, from wanting to stay. There are other key reasons there, but I think that kind of maps out a pretty good roadmap as to why their propaganda, legal, and political fight to keep their draconian immigration matters going in a very sick and disturbing way starts and ends with this guy who the administration cannot even seem to argue in even bad faith anymore actually really did anything wrong or suspicious. They just keep throwing out words like terrorists or bad hombre or whatever the fuck they keep saying.
Well, here's where Bukele comes in. Bukele, who has clearly been enlisted by the Trump administration to help Trump get away with what you're talking about, was asked in this meeting if he will return Abrego Garcia. Listen to this.
The question is preposterous. How could I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing... we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
Swin, hearing that, we're deep inside the fascist hall of mirrors right now. The U.S. says he's a criminal, sends him to El Salvador, and the U.S. says it's not up to us if he's returned, it's up to El Salvador. And then one dictator does another, a solid, and Bukele says, well, why would we return him? He's a criminal. Why would we smuggle a criminal into the United States? But the thing is, the U.S. is paying El Salvador to house these prisoners pursuant to our charges that they broke our laws. You see the circular thing that they're doing here? This is really a hallmark of I think, fascism, really, this type of communication.
Oh, yeah. And beyond it being fascistic and as if some sort of deranged online anime Nazi were making federal policy in the most ad hoc way possible, beyond that, and I mean this as blistering a negative remark, as I hope it's coming across to your audience, one of the worst things I can say about these first few months of the second Trump era is that it really does remind me in the marrow of my bones of what it felt like to live through the very worst abuses and excesses of the George W. Bush War on Terror period. What I mean by that is that, look, when President Bush and his gang were doing all kinds of things like torture and, war crimes, little goodies like that, for the most part, not entirely, but mostly they tried to hide it a little bit. George Bush would go out there and say to the cameras, "Mark my words," or something like that. "America doesn't torture. I do not torture." And of course, it was just complete fabrication and lies. Of course, he was. What we have here with President Trump, and you can draw a direct line from George W. Bush and Dick Cheney to him on matters like this, it's as if George W. Bush went out there in the White House briefing room and told the press, "Yeah, I do torture. What are you going to do to stop me? Come and fucking get it."
That is exactly what it's like. And I think the one of the big takeaways from this meeting is you could visibly see Trump feeling really, really empowered by the mere fact that he was sitting next to a fellow authoritarian. The whole thing was really kind of grotesque and really, really, I think, unsettling in a profound way. Trump was coming into his own as a far-right authoritarian and fascistic leader before our eyes in this meeting.
Yeah, and he was having a hell of a time doing it. He's having the time of his life. He has never had more fun than he is right now. And
right, and Swen, he was like pissing all over the press in front of Bukele as if to say, "See, I can knock around my media just like you can knock around your opposition."
Whenever he hosts guys like this, whether guys like him or Netanyahu or what have yous in the Oval Office, it is the formation, as you said earlier, him coming really into his own as a global leader in right-wing and far-right authoritarian movements. He's surrounded by his very powerful fanboys and cronies from other nations, of which the leader in El Salvador absolutely is when it comes to the national, or should I say international, MAGA culture. And it's like if the historic summit between the Beatles and Elvis went well, except for fascism. You can tell how great a time they're having, feeding on each other's impulses and basest desires, which Trump is showing, not even slowly but surely, he's showing very rapidly. Look at the courts occasionally trying to stop me. They can't. The Democratic opposition can't stop me. All of these different activist groups and the ACLU can't stop me. Look at me. I'm just like a mega version and a much wealthier version of all these other guys, whether they're in the El Salvador or the Philippines or India or where have you. I'm just like you guys, and look at how I'm getting away with it in the supposed land of the free.
Spring is finally here. For us in DC, that means cherry blossom, warmer weather, and more breaking news each and every day. To stay up to date on all the news that you need to know, there's no better place than the DSR Network. And there's no better way to enjoy the DSR Network than to become a member. Members enjoy an ad-free listening experience, access to our Discord community, exclusive content, and more. Use code DSR2025 for a 40% off discount on sign-up at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. That's code DSR2025 at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Yeah, he's essentially saying, look, I'm aligned with them, not with liberal democracies anymore. In fact, at one point, Trump also strongly suggested he wants to start sending criminals who are U.S. citizens to El Salvador as well. Listen to this.
They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country.
Swin, as we know, Trump gets to say who is a criminal and who is not by fiat. This is more or less what his own people said at this meeting. So I still have a little bit of a tough time envisioning them rounding up U.S. citizens and sending them off to a foreign gulag. But what do you think? Where does this leave us? Do we really think he'll get around to trying that?
I hate to break it to you, man. In a way, they already are. And I will tell you how that will sound more plausible to you in terms of what they've been trying to cook up in the bowels of the Trump DOJ or West Wing. Ever since he stepped back into office in late January, there have been serious policy discussions among senior lawyers and appointees within the Trump administration, including guys like Stephen Miller, where they want to get serious about a process that they tried to do during the first Trump presidency, but it stalled out. To denaturalize naturalized U.S. citizens, essentially finding whatever justifications, whether bad faith or extremely bad faith or anything else, to strip certain people's citizenship, including naturalized citizens who, let's say, said something about the Palestine-Israel conflict that they didn't like, or maybe some people who were accused, whether justly or unjustly, of being in a violent gang or gang affiliation, to have their citizenship taken away. And then therefore, after that, deporting them the hell out of our country. This is something that not only our anonymous sources within the administration have been telling us is going on and is being taken seriously, again, with the caveat of whether they actually are able to pull it off or not. At this point, I think we have to take them very, very, very seriously about their efforts. But it was also described to us on the record by Mike Davis, who is, of course, a very close Trump ally, still communicates privately and personally with Donald Trump, and is very, very, very mobbed up and highly respected as a MAGA legal mind among not just the Republican Trumpist elite, but among the West Wing and Trump administration brass. And he just told us on the record, this is my position. This is what I would want President Trump to do. And while he was a little bit cute about it and said, I'm not going to get into the finer details about my private conversations with Trump or anybody in his inner circle, but I can tell you that they take my private counsel very seriously.
And what did he say?
He was specifically talking about quote unquote pro-Hamas individuals who are naturalized American citizens, and heavy quotation marks on pro-Hamas, because the Trump administration's definition of pro-Hamas is resoundingly different than your or mine. But to basically, if they've been naturalized within the past several years, to strip them of their citizenship, accuse them of lying on their citizenship form, and then, in his words, to get them the hell out of our country. And so it's basically a recipe for taking away your citizenship due to things, including but not limited to thought crime, as according to MAGA and Donald Trump. And then I almost said deporting you, which I guess it technically would be, but really what it would be doing is kidnapping you and taking you outside of America's borders. So this is horrifying stuff. We keep talking about it, both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, and it is not good. I do not care for it.
Yeah, I don't either. So sum it up for us, Swin. How bad is it going to get?
I don't want to make this sound like a dodge, but I would actually argue to you that it's been less than 3 months, and baby, we're already there. It is significantly worse than even I had a piss poor opinion of Donald Trump going into his second presidency. It is beneath the floor and beneath the lowly set bar that even someone like I had it at. And so much of what we're seeing now including, but really not at all limited to what you and I have been talking about for the past 20 minutes or so, are things that in a saner and normaler time, maybe even just a decade and a half ago, as imperfect as that world was, if we had just objectively, no hyperbole whatsoever, just wrote down on a note card what was going on right now and that the president of the United States were doing it, mainstream Republican and Democrats and conservatives and liberal lawmakers everywhere would be saying, you're being hysterical. Those are not the actions of an American president in the modern US, America-dominated global world order era. Those are the actions of a tin pot dictator somewhere else on the planet, not here, not in the land of the free. You're being ridiculous. We know that can't happen here, definitely not in the 21st century. There is no way that wouldn't be resoundingly said across the board. And we just have to live up to the fact that we are currently choking really hard on that reality that, I'm sorry, it has happened here. And it's only 3 months in, so I can only see it getting worse.
Swen, it's always terrific to talk to you, folks. If you enjoyed this, or maybe enjoyed isn't the right word, but if you found it illuminating, make sure to check out his writings over at rollingstone.com. Swen, thanks again for coming on with us, man. It's always great to talk to you.
Anytime, dude.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler on the DSR Network.